Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and this will be the second video of this series on programming periodization for Olympic weightlifting training, and this video will be on creating the microcycle. From the previous video, we now understand what training methods can be utilized for weightlifting performance. We can now create a basic microcycle or week of training. This can then be progressed and periodized over time to form a long-term plan. To create a microcycle, the first variable to consider is training frequency. For each method of training, frequency will refer to how many times per week the lift or training method will be performed. First and foremost, we need to establish how many days per week the athlete will be in the gym to train. Generally, more sessions are more beneficial, although the number of workouts an athlete can perform is likely going to be limited by availability rather than optimality. For weightlifting training, at least 3 days per week are probably required to make significant progress, and up to 10 sessions per week can benefit some athletes. Let's use an example athlete and have them train 6 days per week for the sake of this video. So we can see here that the training sessions will be performed every day except for Sunday. Let's now explore the most important variable to consider for training frequency, which is how many times the competition lifts will be performed. Before establishing a training frequency for these lifts, we need to understand that the competition lifts are a skill, not a strength exercise. Remember, the goal of the competition lifts is to improve efficiency at the movement. Skill training generally improves the most by using high frequencies with low volume to minimize fatigue. The snatch is generally considered a more technical lift than the clean and jerk, and usually requires higher frequencies to become proficient at the lift. However, some athletes may struggle more with the technique of the clean or the jerk and may require higher frequencies of that particular lift. For our example, we will have the athlete perform the snatch and clean and jerk 6 times per week to maximize technical practice. We can see here that each training session involves the snatch and clean and jerk or some close variation. The load of these sessions will be undulated, although we'll get to that later in this video. Next, we need to establish the frequency of strength training for weightlifting. Strength training is not as technical as the competition lifts and induces more fatigue than the competition lifts, since the loads used are heavier. Therefore, the frequency of strength training doesn't need to be as high as the competition lifts. A general recommendation would be to perform a squat variation 2 to 3 times per week and a pull variation 2 to 3 times per week. For this example, let's say squats will be performed twice per week, with one session using the back squat and one session using the front squat. Pulling will also be performed twice per week, with one session using the snatch pull and one session using the clean pull. We can see here that squats will be performed on Monday and Thursday, while pulls will be performed on Wednesday and Saturday. And lastly, we need to establish the accessory lifting frequency. Accessory lifts can be programmed in many different ways depending on the athlete's preference. They could be sprinkled in a program wherever time allows after the primary exercises, or they could be performed on a separate day that is dedicated purely to accessory training, or anything in between these two methods could be used. For this example, let's use a high frequency and distribute the accessory training throughout the week. So the frequency will be 6 days per week, but the lifts will vary between sessions. We can see here that we have a row variation, a pressing variation, and a squat variation to get some extra volume to muscle groups that may benefit. So we have a split squat on Monday and a leg press on Thursday. We have a bent over row on Tuesday and a lat pull down on Friday. And we have a dumbbell bench press on Wednesday and a military press on Saturday. So each muscle group is being targeted twice per week. Next, we need to establish intensities and volume for our training program. When referring to intensity, we essentially mean how heavy we will be lifting. Exact intensities won't be applied in this microcycle plan since they will be periodized over time, as we will establish later in this video series. We will simply be planning how intensities can be undulated throughout the week. For the competition lifts, we cannot lift at maximum intensity for every session, since this will likely lead to injury and a plateau in performance. However, we still need to lift close to maximum weights somewhat regularly, as this is the most specific form of training we have. We have 3 general categories of loads in the competition lifts that we can use in our training. These are heavy, moderate, and light loads. Heavy sessions can be categorized as 90% or heavier loads. These sessions have the goal of improving absolute performance in the classic lifts. Heavy sessions should only be implemented 1 to 2 times per week, or even every second week for heavier and more advanced athletes. Moderately heavy sessions can be categorized as lifting loads somewhere in the range of 70 to 90%. These sessions allow technical practice with moderate loads to retain competence in the classic lifts. These sessions can be implemented 1 to 3 times per week, depending on how frequently heavy sessions will be performed. Light sessions can be categorized as loads of 60% and below. These loads barely have any transfer to competition performance, but they allow the positions of the lift to remain familiar. These sessions should be used simply to retain movement proficiency while decaying fatigue. Light sessions can be performed as frequently as needed, as they will induce almost no fatigue and can actually act as active recovery. We can plan the intensity of each competition lifting session based on these categories. So in this example, we have Monday and Tuesday being light sessions, before Wednesday, which is a moderate session. Then Thursday and Friday are light sessions, before Saturday, which is a heavy session. So this athlete has 2 primary training sessions with an emphasis on the competition lifts, while the other days use light loads to allow recovery and maintenance of technical proficiency. Volume for the competition lifts refers to how many repetitions are performed in each session, or over the training week. Volume for the competition lifts is far less important than intensity and frequency, since the competition lifts are a skill rather than a strength stimulus. We want to train technical skills in a low fatigue state and when the athlete is feeling fresh. High volumes of the snatch or clean and jerk may diminish the quality of skill practice, making it simply unnecessary to perform. Therefore, it is probably unnecessary to perform multiple sets of a certain load for most athletes. 1 to 3 sets at the working weight should be enough per session volume. The volume and intensity of strength lifts will be periodized over time and will be covered later in this video series. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.